Hi there. If you're watching this, you've either purchased my set of French curves, in which case thank you very much, or maybe simply curious as to what I've made here. Now the idea behind this set was I thought that they may be helpful for those of you as you work in Manga Studio 5. Now there are a plethora of fantastic virtual rulers built into the program already, and if you haven't tried them out yet, I highly suggest you do so. But some of you out there may be making the transition from the analog art world to the digital one, and maybe missing some of the real world tools you like to work with, like French curves. And since Manga Studio doesn't come with French curves, I thought I'd make a set. So this is going to be your video instruction manual on how to use and work with these virtual French curves. Now first off, because you can't save rulers or paths as materials in Manga Studio, I had to make these rulers on their own mangastudio.lib file. And by the way, if you make your own custom rulers in the program, this is a great way to store them away for future use. So what you need to do is select the curve you want to use and then copy it over to the page you're working on. So I'm going to grab the object selector tool and I'm going to click along the path of this French curve here. And as you can see, the ruler is now highlighted. Now all I have to do now is come up to the main menu, select copy, and then paste it onto the canvas that I'm working on. Now I have a blank canvas already set to go. All I do is come up to the main menu, paste, and there's my French curve. Now you'll notice these points along the ruler. These are what you're going to use to resize and adjust the curve. Clicking on here will adjust the size of the French curve. Clicking along the border will help you move the curve. And clicking this point here will rotate the curve. Now you may have noticed when I resized, the shape of the French curve didn't stick. Now if you didn't want that, if you wanted to keep the curve in its initial shape, first undo and reselect it. And this time what I'm going to do is hold down the shift key. And as I do that and click and drag, the ruler maintains its shape. And then all I have to do is just like position the ruler where I want it, maybe adjust the rotation a little bit, then switch to one of my pens and draw along the ruler like so. And this is again one of those things where I really like about the virtual rulers in Manga Studio, because unlike using the straight line or the straight curve tool, which gives you a fixed width line or curve, you can add a little more life to your lines. So you can make the lines as thick or as thin as you want. Sometimes depending on how you draw along it, you may notice it kind of snaps along like that. That's just the nature of how the curves are. If you didn't want that, simply undo or grab your eraser and just erase away the parts that you don't need. And by the way, if the French curve as you're drawing on it doesn't seem to snap to it, make sure that the snap to feature is turned on up here. If it's off, you'll just see it will not be highlighted, and you draw, it'll just look like that. So you would want to make sure that the snap to feature is turned on, and then your line should snap to the French curve. Then simply grab your object selector tool, or as a bit of a shortcut, hold down the command key. If you're still on your pen, hold down the command key on Mac or the control key on Windows, and you can select the ruler that way. And it's a good quick way to readjust the position and rotation of the French curve, and then release the key and you can go back to drawing your curves. So let's say you use this ruler on a penciling layer, like this is your penciling layer. But if I had a new layer on top for inking, you'll notice that the ruler disappears. And that's because by default, the ruler is only active on the layer that it's been placed upon. So because it's only on this penciling layer, as noted by this icon here, it only will show up on the layer that it's on. Now you can fix this by coming up to the layers palette, clicking here and selecting show in all layers, and it'll show the ruler in all the layers. But in order to adjust it, you would have to highlight the layer that the ruler has been placed on, and then adjust it, and then go back to your inking layer, and you can kind of see how it would be a bit cumbersome. My suggestion is to just take the ruler and place it on the layer that you're going to use it on. To do that, come back to the layers palette, click the icon, and then drag it up to the layer you're going to be working on. And then grab your pen tool and draw just like you had before. And of course, when you're all done with the ruler, simply select it, and then either press delete or come up to the main menu and select layer, ruler, delete ruler. Now one last thing before I wrap this up. I showed how you can work with one of the simple curves like this one, but let's say you want to use one of these curves, which will look a little more complicated. If you click on the ruler, you'll notice that only the outside border gets selected. These interior segments don't get selected unless you hold down the shift key and select them individually. Now that's one way to get the entire French curve onto your canvas, but in order to adjust and resize and rotate, you'd have to shift click all of the elements of this French curve in order to keep it all in one piece. And that's mostly because these rulers are all made up of separate elements. So this French curve is made up of the outer shell and then these two inner rulers. So my solution is, if you only need this particular segment, just select that particular segment. You're not limited, because these are separate elements, you're not limited to taking the entire French curve. If you only need this interior segment or this segment or this segment, there's nothing stopping you from just selecting that ruler, copying it, and pasting it onto the canvas that you're working on. It's just something to keep in mind as you're working with these French curves. Anyway, that's going to do it for this instructional video. Again, if you've purchased this set, I thank you very much. If you haven't and you're looking for a set of analog-like tools that you can use on a digital canvas like in Manga Studio, I hope that this set of French curves will help you out. Thanks for watching, and enjoy your rulers.